How close is Stamford to New York City? Well, on September 19th, 1896, the first marathon ever to occur in the United States started in Stamford, Connecticut, and ended in New York City. Stamford's proximity to New York is not incredibly unique. There are simply many other places that have this same distance from New York City, and likewise, other places around the country and the world that have this distance to a major metropolitan area. But none of those places really seem to look like Stamford. They don't have our wealth of companies, and they don't have our vibrance, do they? Some of them do a little bit, but those places don't have $6 billion worth of development happening right now in anticipation of what's to come in Stamford. Those places do not have a vibrance that brings out 5, 10 thousands of people into the streets for weeks upon weeks during the summer and other events throughout the year. Those places do not have award-winning park restorations that is bringing people together and outside year-round. And there's no other place like Stamford that I've found that has these qualities, or even just one more that's unique, and that is Stamford has an innovation district that is anchored by a library, the building that we're in right now. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the term innovation district, it's a fairly new concept, which essentially identifies that if we look around the globe, places that have concentrations and clustering of people and companies and amenities and services, when they're all together geographically in the same place, you get collisions. Collisions is what sparks innovation. This is something we were actually recently recognized for in Stamford. CT Next recognized Stamford as an innovation place and awarded a $2 million grant to catalyze what we have going on here. So this is what I've been up to the last 4 months, is managing this grant, our 13 initiatives, our 6 goals, and the very beginning of our progress towards what we're building here. Now, before we get into what we're doing, I want to pause and identify 2 things. Number 1, what you see here is the map of our innovation district. And the first step here in any place is to identify your map. Look at your space, look at your strengths, your gaps, your assets. Where do they collide? But the most important thing I want you to take away today is not what we're doing in Stamford, not the projects that are happening here. I want you to take away today this bigger idea of the strategy behind placemaking, which is really what we're trying to do, because what we want to do is serve as a model for other places to assess what they have and what they want and what they want to build. So I'll share 2 examples of what we're doing, but first I need to explore 2 words I've mentioned. The first being the word collisions. So what is a collision, and why is this important? Is it networking? No, it's actually, I think, the exact opposite of networking. When you're networking, you're trying. You're trying to meet somebody. You're trying to have a conversation and a shared interest and see if there's any way for you 2 to play nice together. When you have a collision, this is accidental. It's unintentional. It's not trying. It's completely different. And in fact, the brain is working differently during these different periods. Anybody here watch the show 30 Rock when it was on? There's an episode about this. It's called The Shower Principle. And so Alec Baldwin eloquently explains to Liz Lemon that he's not putting in his office to avoid doing work. No, that's not what he's doing. He's trying to stimulate his anterior superior temporal gyrus, which is the fancy way of saying that feeling you get when you're showering and you think of something without trying. You remember something. It's that sudden cognitive inspiration that's different. And that's why collisions are something to focus on, not so much networking. Now, there's another word we need to talk about here. It's the theme of the day. Innovation. To innovate. We made the whole theme about today, innovate, but do we know what it means? Does it matter what it means? Some people today are saying that innovation is a buzzword, right? Which is a way of saying that word doesn't have meaning. So is that true? Or is it a word that we keep saying because it's actually important and it does have meaning and it does warrant having a day about it? Other people will say that, innovation is about creativity. It's about disrupting and having new ideas and being solution-driven. Okay, we can see how that can play a role, right? But are all new ideas good? Aren't there some ideas that are really bad? And some disruptions that are really bad, and some creativity that doesn't work? So what we're getting at here is innovation is vague, but it's complex. It's important, but it's contested. And so it seems what we should do is focus less on defining innovation and identifying what is innovation and what is not innovation, and more time having discussions and coming to terms about the parameters which we're seeing lead to objectively good innovation. So this has been our approach in Stamford here, and it's our approach that we hope will be replicated elsewhere. We believe these components will demonstrate placemaking that works, innovation that works, and a community worth sharing. What we have here is one project that we've come up with as a result of this assessment of looking at assets and strengths, gaps and weaknesses. And one idea that we keep coming back to is that it seems the parameters that generate objectively good innovation happen when you have a marathon, but you also have a sprint at the same time. Right? Because you got to have a marathon. It's a long road. It takes a lot of work. But you also need to be sprinting. You need to be iterating. You need new ideas. You do need disruption. You need to be creative. But you need to do that at the same time as the marathon, and that's the hard part. You need to have both. So when we looked at Stamford, and we said, what does Stamford need? What are Stamford's strengths? What are Stamford's weaknesses and gaps? Well, one of the first things that came to mind was, okay, this is a great place to live. It's really truly a great place to work. It's a great place to have fun, right? That live, work, play is something you've heard, not just in Stamford, but a lot of cities have been talking about this. So what else does Stamford need now? Well, we know that we do have a lot of companies, but every single company we talk to tells us they're actually having trouble finding the right people to fill their roles. It's not because we don't have people here, we do. It's not because we're not growing, we are. It's because the world is changing so fast. And we need to keep learning. Live, work, play, learn. This is the fourth word that Stamford has chosen to add and focus on. Now, not every place should add the word learn or focus on this. Again, I want you to take away today things to focus on and think about for your place. But here we do need to focus on learning, because I guarantee you, whether you're here in this room in front of me, or you're in Yukon Stamford, or you're in our stream location in New Haven, you probably like visiting Stamford. You probably maybe have a job here, you like living here, or you have a generally good impression of Stamford. But are you still learning? And are you learning here? So this is what we're looking to address. One of the things we're looking to address. What you're looking at is the heart of Stamford, Landmark Square. And we are in the midst of planning for a first-of-its-kind co-learning institution right in the heart of Landmark Square. A 15,000 square foot facility which will have multiple institutions located on the ground, but more importantly, will serve as a hub for learning. It will open the doors to people of all different types that want to be in a place that's innovative and different, and allows them to cluster and bump into people. It's also a place where we can connect with the employers, and employers can connect with us. It's also going to be a place where employers can work with the institutions to design curriculum and programs that are going to meet the workforce needs. Now, we don't know what a lot of this is going to be, but we're setting ourselves up to be in a situation where we can be prepared for that and pivot. I'll share one more project that we have for Innovate Stamford, and then I'm going to ask for your help today. This is Veterans Park. It's just down the street from here. It is a hub in Stamford. What we find is, even though geographically this is in such a perfect place, it's actually not getting a lot of people to dwell here. Not people coming out to have their lunches here, their meetings here. People aren't having events here or concerts here. They're not having collisions here, and they're not really showering here, are they? This is something else we want to change. Today, occasionally, we might get a food truck that shows up and draws some people. Green space, not so much pavement. We will also have stadium seating, allowing for concerts and venues. Public gig Wi-Fi, digitally opening the doors to endless possibilities. And maybe, just maybe, we'll take those free trolleys we have in Stamford and make them autonomous. This is placemaking that works for Stamford because it's a marathon and it's a sprint. We're looking what has been successful over time, where we are today, what are our strengths, and we're looking at the gaps we have. And that is where we are focusing on addressing issues. Again, this is concepts we hope will be replicated elsewhere when you address your place where you live. So, how do you do placemaking that works? Number one, to spark the unintentional, be intentional. We get that collisions are a good thing, but we do need to concentrate. We do need to focus and decide on how we're going to go about spurring those unintentional innovations. Take a shower and encourage others to shower too. We need more people out there. We need more people colliding. Teeter between your marathon and your sprint. You will always have long-term goals and short-term goals. The ability to work quickly and the ability to think strategically and plan for the long run. Our aim here is that by doing this, we will create a community worth sharing. Thank you.